Now at that point, I know I've got the timing good enough to where it obviously, runs a little bit. I do have the exhaust manifolds on, but I have no exhaust actually hooked up. So the next step to be able to run this thing long enough to be able to break in the cam and everything, I've got to have fuel up to the carburetor, and I've got to be able to plumb the cooling system. You can run this thing for a minute without the cooling system, but you don't want to run it much more than that. So I started getting everything together to put that together. As far as the accessories go, I've got the alternator started. I got to finish bolting it up, and then I got to get a little bit of a spacer for right here to make sure that's square. So we're taking a look here. Got the water pump pulley. Got to make sure we're in line. So I will have to grab. Got a couple different pulleys here to make sure that we're there. But where I was running into an issue is with the harmonic balancer. So here's the harmonic balancer pulley. I'm fairly certain that is the one that came on this particular engine. It's been a while, I don't recall, but I'm fairly certain that's the one. And when we look at the alternator lineup and this particular here, it looks like I'm lined up as far as the belt goes. I suppose the easier way to test that. Get it wrapped around here quick. All right, so if we're looking at this, we've got pretty decent alignment on that belt. Get a good angle on it. Now where I'm running issue is with the water pump pulley. Let's see if I can get a good view in here. So to get the pulley on where it needs to go, it actually hits the crank pulley. So I'm trying to decide what to do. I do have another crank pulley. Pop that off. So with this particular crank pulley on, oh come on, almost, hang on, there we go. With this particular crank pulley on, again, I seem to have pretty decent belt alignment. And when I come over and put the water pump pulley on, it does not interfere, but the alignment is just a little bit off, so I would have to shim the pulley out just a touch. So if I bottom it all the way, kind of hard to see, but I do have a kick in the alternator right there and a kick in the crank pulley. So I would have to shim it out, which isn't a problem. I think I've got a couple of shims left. But the other issue I run into is with the crank pulleys. So Ford had a couple different ones they used throughout the years. This one here is a 4-bolt pulley. Oh, that one's a 3-bolt pulley. So a couple options that I have is I can attempt to go rob the crank pulley, or excuse me, the harmonic balancer off of my other 351 that this crank pulley came off of, and it has the 3-bolt. Or there's enough room, I checked already, I can actually take, I get them lined up here, apologize for the shaky camera movements. So if I line up one bolt in the center here, where to go? All right, so I have this bolt lined up and I have the center bore lined up. I can punch out the other 3 holes, and for the point of actually testing, I can slap that together to get things up and going, which I think is going to be the route that I take right now. Now I do have, I don't think I showed it on this particular page, but I showed it on my Facebook, or my Instagram page. I do have a CVF full front drive serpentine kit. Get around here. That I did show an unboxing video of on my Instagram feed, which is a full chrome serpentine dress kit. So if I can get all the rest of this thing working, then I may go ahead and install that kit. But I might do that as a winter project because I just want to get this thing driving. I don't want to be down. So in a couple of days, we do have the next car show for my car club. It's a cruising and award night. Members are not eligible for awards, so I'm not worried about that. But this thing's been down all season. I'd really like to get it moving. So I think what I'm going to do is shim the water pump pulley and punch out this one to the 4-bolt enough to be able to just get this running. You know, another show that I watch is not coined, but is definitely famous for the term, don't get it right, just get it running. That's kind of what I'm doing here. I'd need to get this thing up and moving and running, and then with another down season, I can kind of fine tune and clean up and, you know, make it a little more presentable for the year. So that's the goal I have right now. All right, so I have the crank pulley in. I started out with just 2 bolts to hold it in, make sure it's gonna work. I've got the fan on, put a couple of spacers back behind the pulley. We're pretty well in line with what I wanna see. Again, I will eventually be switching all this up one way or another. This is just to make sure everything works right now. So what I have to do yet is hook up the actual alternator, you know, all the connectors in the back here, and install the radiator. I've got the one little cheater hose from there to there, one radiator hose up top, the one on the bottom. So both of these are going to be passenger side. So if you're looking for an aftermarket radiator, sorry. So again, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. Every step gets us there. All right, so last update for today. Got the radiator in, got the shroud in. Alternator is tight. I still have to hook up the connections. So I'm not super worried about that right now. Got the lower radiator hose in. You can just kind of see down there. Got the upper hose in, so all this is good to go. I'm gonna get a couple new hose clamps. Just be a little better shape than the old ones I was using. And I did have to order this bypass hose. I can't find the one that I took off. Normally these would go into the heater core. I do not have my heater core hooked up. I'm not overly concerned. It's a convertible, it's a classic. I don't drive it when it's cold out. So coming over, again, I need the hose to go out of there and into there. A couple of hose clamps, fill it up, get that alternator tightened on, and then find a way to fill the fuel bowls on this guy. And tomorrow I should be able to fire this up. So here we are a couple days later, and I'll show you what I've gotten thus far and what my new hangups are. So I got everything connected. I got that little cheater pipe hooked up. I did have to replace my little block off that was leaking. Got all the hose ends on and connected. Got the fuel line, everything connected. I've been able to get it to bark off with spray. I have not been able to get the fuel pump primed. So I was working on some options with there. I decided to go ahead and get an electronic fuel pump that isn't reliant on the cranking of the engine. Because again, with breaking in that camshaft, you don't want to just have extended cranking, you know, without the oil flowing. So I wanted something I could prime, you know, without having to rely on that. So as soon as I got everything wired and hooked up, I started kicking fuel out of the connections of my fuel filter. So that is the one issue with these, because you've got several different connections where you do run the risk of losing seal, losing fluid, things like that. I like this because you can see, you know, if there's any contaminant, you can see when the filter is full. They do have another style. This just looks a little more trick, looks a little more hot rod, but they do have another style of fuel filter that is see-through, but it is sealed. So I'm going to put that one in and reconnect the fuel and make sure I can pop off that way. If I do decide to keep the electric pump, which I don't know if y'all remember when I was building this motor originally, I was having issues trying to find the right piece for the fuel pump eccentric. So that may not be activating the manual fuel pump. So right now I'm just going to leave that attached as kind of a placeholder, but I've been wanting to do an electric pump anyway. Now again, anything I do up here will be temporary. A fuel pump is a pump, not a pull. These things want to be at the back with the fuel and push it forward. If you have extended, trying to pull, they tend to wear out pretty quickly. So you want to be able to get in back, you want to be below the line of fuel, so gravity helps feed it once you start going like a siphon effect, and then it wants to push the fuel forward, not so much of a pull. But again, for the sake of firing up, I'll be able to get that done. I also need to reconnect that Z-bar, and I do need to put some fluid into the transmission, and I need to check the rear end fluid as well. So those are the three main things I need to do in case I am able to get this running. One of the other things I am doing is trying to fab up a new seat. So I do have the bracket in there, I've got a template there, and I do have a sheet of steel. I want to put like a classic Mustang seat in here, or I might go with, I know that one's an 07, will go with something like a New Edge style that actually has the seat belt built into the seat and gives me a shoulder harness, which will make me feel a lot more comfortable when driving the convertible. So I've got some options there as well. But a couple days later, I do have the vehicle out of the garage sitting on a flat, a little bit easier to get working on some stuff. Obviously I've got the hood back on again temporarily. I did put the scoop back on, so I'm really hoping I can get this thing running and driving. I did just get a cortisone shot in my shoulder, so my right arm is a little not 100%, so we'll see how far I'm able to get today. All right, so I got the carburetor primed, or I've got fuel squirting when I hit the throttle to it. I've got the clutch pedal hooked up. I've still got a couple bolts I've got to cinch down. I've got, what else did I get done? Got that filter replaced. So we're at a point where, again, we can attempt to test fire. We're going to make sure I don't have anything in the way of the fan or anything else is going to move. I'm going to hit that fuel pump. Again, it's temporary setup. Not anything I'm going to have as a permanent install of that nature. But it'll be enough to get everything running. And then once I do that, I'll be able to verify if I have an issue with my primary fuel pump, and if I'm just going to wire this thing in complete, or if I can go off of that. So I'm going to run over, try and fire it up, and see if we can start the break-in. Getting closer. So 1 step forward, 5 steps back, as always with the projects that I have. So I've got the car running. I still got to brake in the cam. You'll get the idle and get the timing set where I can brake it in the rest of the way. Works a lot better when you remember to hook up the fuel pump and plug it into a fuel jug in order to be able to run. So I've got that part, and it's running pretty strong, pretty reliable. So for the sake of the neighbors, I wanted to throw just real quick exhaust on it, just so it wasn't quite so loud. And this is one of the issues I thought I had gotten around, but apparently I hadn't. All right, so we're up under the vehicle. We've got the transmission here. This is that Z-bar linkage I was talking about that activates the clutch, pushes in on the clutch rod. But when I went to hook up my exhaust pipe, that's the manifold, and that goes right into that Z-bar. So I'm gonna have to do some research and see what I can do around that. So in the interest of time, I think that's going to be the last of this particular episode, working on getting the Fairlane up and going again. The next is going to be setting up that linkage, getting the timing and the idle and all that adjusted, getting the throttle pedal adjusted, because I either have wide open throttle or I have idle. Right now with the way it's set, I do not have both, and I need to research on that driver's side exhaust a little bit more. So next time you see this thing on Lips Garage, hopefully it'll be buttoning up and getting it set to go. I've got to finish that driver's seat as well, see what I've got for options there. So as always, I do appreciate those of you that tune in and watch. If you feel obliged to do so, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe if you want to support the channel. Otherwise, list any comments. What do you want to see? What have you seen that you like? What do you want to see more of? Just let me know. I'm always looking for new types of videos to shoot. So whatever you got, send them at me. I'll answer what I can, and if it's capable enough, I will throw it on a video as well. So as always, thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys on the next one.